G'day folks, Rod here from the Learn to Paint Academy. Now in this little presentation I want to walk you through a recent painting that I did. It's a really simple basic landscape designed so that anybody can have a go at it. But what I did with this one is instead of doing a video where you've got to sit through like an hour or more to actually see the whole process, I thought I'd take progress photos and then just walk you through those progress photos and just talk about the key things that I'm doing in each of the steps. So I've broken it down into the 3 steps of the Moore method of painting, and then there's a few photos of each of those steps. So let's go and have a look at that. Okay, so this is the simple little landscape, and I wanted to come up with a new project, a new workshop. Actually, I was intending to do this as a physical workshop, but something simple, but also something that demonstrated a lot of the elements of landscape painting that we strive for, right? So aerial perspective and so on. And I want to also do something that has a kind of an Australian feel to it, like Australian country feel when the baking sun, burned off all the fields and so on. And so I made this composition up completely. I have a tendency, I do tend to like large dominant tree on a hillside. So that's, a typical sort of subject for me. But as you can see, there's a few main elements in it. It's not an overly complex painting, but it works as a nice little composition. And again, I want to stress it's designed for those people who are just starting out to get them to a point where they can do a simple landscape like this and build up a bit of confidence that maybe they can learn to paint. So let's get underway. Step 1, of course, with the Moore method of painting is the drawing. Now, let me just come back to the main photo here. First thing about the drawing is we want to identify the big shapes. And my hope is that if you've been following me for a while, you can look at a subject like this and you can see the big shapes right away. So I'll show you my little drawing. Now, I always do my drawing with a dark tone, usually ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson mixed together. And one of the things I want to stress is when you do your drawing, keep that paint thin, all right? Because we want to make sure that we can layer paint over the top of it later on. So you can see here that I've gone and I've mapped in the big tree on the left, the second largest tree on the right. So they're sort of bookends, if you like, but they're definitely not the same shape and size. That's important. You can see that the big tree reaches right up into the sky and overlaps everything else. And I've also brought the shadow of that big tree down closer to us. Okay, it's halfway down the field, whereas the secondary tree is almost on the edge of that line for the hill. So they're the 2 sort of big tree shapes, little row of trees behind them. And then we've got the foreground shape, which is really just one line that I've run and sloped down left to right. So that's a big shape in there. We've got the little mountain range in the background, and we've got the sky. So we've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe about 6 big shapes that we have to worry about there. One of the key things to think about is that shape of the path. Notice how I've got it tapering out as it comes closer to us, just to try and create that sense of depth into the painting. So this step is pretty easy. And I think one of the reasons why people have loved the Moore method of painting is because it takes a complex subject. If you're standing there out in the field, looking at it from life, or you're looking at a photo, right? It takes that complex subject matter and it breaks it down into simple, easy to understand shapes with no detail at all. It's just outlines really at this stage. And then from there we move into, of course, to step 2, the block in. Now this is all about getting color down on the canvas and building up our value structure. Okay, so values are really important if you want to become a landscape or a seascape painter and you want to have an element of realism in there. So you're not going to be fully abstract, which is, what all landscape painting is. It has a degree of realism in there, right? Otherwise it would be abstract expressionism. So you need to understand values. And you need to understand other things as well, like color, temperature, and so on. But let's just focus in on values, which is mainly what we do in our block in. So let's have a look at that. So first starting point, our largest tree on the left here. You can see I've mixed up our strongest dark. Okay, it's getting very close to a chromatic black. So I've mixed that up and put the shadow in at the same time with that. Now, interesting things I want you to notice is It's not a round ball on a stick, right? Which many of us tend to gravitate towards when we're painting our trees. But notice the edges. There's no perfect shaped edges in there. They're a little bit random, much like Mother Nature, right? So this is the big dominant dark shape in the painting. And then we move to the secondary tree. Notice it's a bit cooler in tone. It's more blue. There's a little bit more red in the main tree. It's a little bit cooler in tone. And you notice where I've got them sitting in the foreground hill area. So the main tree is closer to us. Okay, that's a key point. And you can tell that by where it connects with the earth there. And we move along, and I've gone and put those background trees in very loosely with a cooler, lighter version of the same mix. Okay, so it's a little bit bluer, it's a little bit lighter in value. So now we've got a values pattern being set up just in our vertical elements, which are the trees. We've got 3 different sets of trees, and we're stepping back from darkness to lighter to cooler as we go. And then with that mountain range, of course, is further off in the distance, so it cools right down and it gets a lot lighter in value. So you're getting a sense of depth already building up into the painting. And I hope you can see that in the painting there. That depth is already starting to take shape there. So once I've got all the vertical planes, which is the trees, in, and then I've got the sloping planes, which is really that mountain range. We then move to some of the flatter planes, which is the grasses, right? The flat earth. Okay, there's a little bit of a hill, but it's still relative to the position of the light, the sun, it's still relatively flat. And so what I've done here is I've just blocked in an earthy tone. It's mostly yellow ochre with a little bit of alizarin crimson and a little bit of the ultramarine blue, just a pinhead of the ultramarine blue. And I've just blocked that in as a tone, just to get the color down there and get the field established. And notice that I've flicked up a few little spots of it to look like grass around the base of the trees as well. Pretty simple step, that one. We do need to establish a gradient of the tone in the field from foreground to distance. And I have done that a little bit. Way off in the distance there, it's slightly lighter in value, but probably not definite enough, that shift in the value. So I'll probably work on that as we progress. Now I'm starting to bring in the sky. Okay, you can see I've got the blue and the lighter tone in the sky there. And I want you to always remember the sky is the source of the light. And as such, it probably means it's going to be the lightest value in the painting there. And then I've just softened it out. So if I just go back one, you can see that I've created 2 bands, the darker version at the top and then the lighter version below that. But I haven't blended them or joined them there. So what I do is I clean my brush off, make sure there's no paint in the brush or solvent or anything. And then I just go and feather those 2 edges together just to remove that hard edge. And it's a very subtle, very soft gradient in the sky, but there is one there. And again, because it's a beginner painting, I'm not going to go and overcomplicate the sky. I just want to keep that really simple so we can concentrate on the main elements in this painting. Okay, and then I block in a tone for the path, right? So there's going to be a dirt road, and I've gone for a slightly lighter value, which is an earthy, orangey kind of tone. Okay, so we pop that in as well. And that really then, so you can see that I've got color down in all the main elements in the painting. So therefore, that brings us to the end of step number 2, which is our blocking phase. Now at this point, I would generally go and have a rest so that this can just dry off a bit, tack off a little bit if you're using oils, or if you're using acrylics, you want it to be fully bone dry. Okay, so you don't want to be coming back into it if it's still a little bit wet if you're using acrylics. So I go and have a break. Sometimes I'll leave it overnight. And then we come into step 3. And this is where we go for our details and highlights and finishing touches. And at this point, we want to slow right down and be a little bit more considered in our approach to how we progress the painting from here. So as you can see, I've started to build up this big tree on the left-hand side. And I've done that by mixing up different variations of green. And so I'm using French ultramarine blue, the yellow ochre, a little bit of cadmium yellow light, and occasionally I'll use a pinhead of alizarin crimson just to grey it back a little bit. And with the light coming from the left-hand side and across the painting, I wanted to make sure that I put most of my lighter, warmer colours on that left-hand side to indicate that they're catching the light, and I'm maintaining my shadows on the right-hand side. And you can see that it's now starting to get some volume into that tree. It's not a flat object anymore. It's starting to take on a bit of a rounded feel to it. Okay, and then I've come in here and I've done similar things with the other trees. That secondary tree, I've shifted the tone ever so slightly to a little bit more on the yellow ochre side, because I didn't want to put punchy cadmium yellow or yellow lights into the, competing against the main tree. And then I've muted the greens for the background trees. Now, really important point here. Notice that I have kept most of my darks. Okay, I haven't painted out the darks. And so each of the trees has a dark side and then a middle sort of value and then a lighter side. And it gives it that form, that volume in a tree, and starts to make it have that three-dimensional shape to it. Okay, so now I've just come back, have a look at the field. This is what we're focusing on now. The field I've done nothing to at this point, but now we start to build up the field. And I've gone for lighter tones further off in the distance. And then as it's come forward, I've warmed up some of those tones. You can see that in the left-hand, bottom side left-hand there, and a little bit near the path on the right-hand side. Just warming up those tones, because warm colours bring the eye, or bring the element forward, and cooler tones send it back into the distance, right? So I've got lighter values and cooler in the distance, and then warmer and darker values in the foreground here. Okay, so big step this one. I'll just go back. Okay, have a look at the trees and the mountain in the background, and now we come forward. And so what I've done is I've added in some trunks and things into the trees and branches, but not too much, just a real subtle indication of them. And all I've done is I've mixed up the yellow ochre, a bit of alizarin crimson, and perhaps a pinhead of the ultramarine blue to grey it a little bit, and some white. Okay, and it's pretty much on the warm reddish orangish side, those tree trunks, but that's okay, they work. Now the key is to not overdo them. Just indicate a few little clips where the light would be going through the tree and hitting on the tree trunk or the branches. So you can see that I've done that for the two main trees. I haven't done it for the background trees because it's probably just overkill, but what I have done is put a little line of fence posts in the background there. Okay. Now you can see on the mountain range in the background, I've gone and put in an indication of the rocky escarpment there on the top of the mountains, similar to what you might find in Kapiti Valley or the Blue Mountains, places like that. And all that is a mixture again of yellow ochre, alizarin crimson, a little bit of the blue just to grey it back, and some white to push that tone right back, right, to reduce the value so that it's a similar sort of value range as the mountain itself. Okay, and it's quite effective. It draws your eye up the path and into that rocky escarpment, but it's not too dominant that it's taking over the painting. Okay, added in a few little birds up in the, you can see them against the main tree there. Just a few little cockatoos, Australian cockatoos. And I put a little bit of shadow edging along the path there. I actually painted it a lot heavier than that, but then I thought, oh, it's too strong, so I just smudged it back in. But you can still see the remnants of the edge of the path there, a little bit of shadow. And that, my friends, is a finished little painting. Now, there's a lot more you could do with this. You could develop it a lot further with grasses and flowers in the field and so on. And by all means, do that if that's something that you want to do personally. I just want to stress again that I created this little project so that even if you were an absolute beginner having your very first go at painting and you were able to follow the instructions, which is not always easy for everyone, right? Then you would be able to do this painting. Okay, so it's using a very simple approach, the Moore method of painting. There was 3 steps: the drawing, the blocking, and then the details and highlights, right? We used basically 3 colors, which is French ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, plus the booster color, cadmium yellow light, or lemon yellow, but just a tiny little bit of that, and titanium white. And I've used mostly a big 1-inch flat brush. I a rigger brush, and a palette knife. And that's it. Three simple tools, right? And that's the beauty of the Moore method of painting, is that it simplifies things right down, and pretty much anyone can have a go. So please have a go, give it a try. And I think you'll find this is a great little painting to do. And you can make up your own variations of it as well. I mean, I just completely made this painting up as a little demonstration painting, and you could make up your own little version of this painting quite easily. Try different formats and different sizes, and you'll find it a pretty easy little thing to come up with your own designs. So I hope you've enjoyed that. And if it's your first time following us here at the Learn to Paint Academy, then please go and visit our website, www.learntopaint.academy. That is our online art school where we've taught 35,000 students around the world now how to paint. And when you go to that website, if you go there for the first time, just look in the menu, and up the top there you'll find a button which says free course, and that'll take you to a page where you can register to do our free course, where I actually give you video demonstrations that show you how to complete 4 different painting projects. And if you've enjoyed this one, you'll absolutely love our free course where we go into a lot more detail and show you on video how to actually paint 4 different painting projects. So go to www.learntopaint.academy, and when you're there, look for the free course button in the menu, and go and register yourself for that, and we'll see you on the inside of the Learn to Paint Academy. My name's Rod Moore. I'm the founder of the Learn to Paint Academy. Hope you've enjoyed this little presentation, and look forward to talking to you soon. Cheers.